She rushed into the storm to save a stranger's life, never knowing her kindness would unlock a billionaire's heart and change both their worlds forever. Hi, my beautiful family. I have missed you all. Thank you so for sticking around with me. I truly appreciate your love and support. If you're already hooked in for today's story and ready to enjoy it, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one. And you don't want to miss it. Now let us begin. The morning shift had already bled into the afternoon, and the emergency ward smelled of antiseptic, sweat, and caffeine. Nurse Lila Hart moved through the chaos like a current, gentle but unrelenting. Her sneakers squeaked on the polished floor as she adjusted 4 drips, comforted a crying child, and smiled at a patient who didn't remember her name. "Lila, you've been here 12 hours, her colleague warned. "I'll rest when the patients do," she said, her voice calm but tired. There was something unspoken behind her professionalism, grief, tucked neatly behind her practiced smile. 2 years ago, her younger brother, Jamie, had died of a treatable heart condition because they couldn't afford a private hospital. That guilt still lingered like a bruise. Every time she saved a life, it felt like she was making it up to him. When her shift ended at midnight, she wrapped her scarf around her neck and stepped into the cold city air. Rain fell in thin silver threads, the kind that soaked through clothes and silence. The world outside the hospital felt like another planet, bright billboards flashing ads for luxury watches and stock markets rising while she counted coins for bus fare. She tucked her hair under her hood and whispered a tired prayer. Let tomorrow be kinder. Across town, in a penthouse high above the city, Adrian Cole sat in darkness. The rain traced rivers down the glass wall behind him, blurring the skyline he practically owned. The flicker of a news channel illuminated his face, angular, controlled, almost too still. Cole Industries has finalized the hospital acquisition, his assistant reported over the phone. Good, Adrian replied simply, though his tone was colder than satisfaction. He ended the call, poured himself a drink, and stared at the framed photo on his desk. A woman with laughing eyes, gone 6 years now. Charlotte, his wife. The cancer had eaten her life quickly, leaving him nothing but silence and wealth he couldn't use to save her. Since then, success had become his armor. He built companies, tore down competitors, and donated just enough to soothe his conscience. But the truth was simple, he hadn't felt alive in years. He turned off the TV and glanced at the city below. The rain intensified, and thunder growled. Somewhere out there, people still cared, still risked, still loved. He envied them. It was past 1 a.m. when fate decided their paths would cross. Lila's bus broke down 2 streets away from home. Grumbling softly, she chose to walk the rest of the way, the rain plastering her hair to her face. Headlights cut through the storm, too fast, too close, then the sound of twisting metal and shattering glass split the night. God! She gasped, dropping her umbrella and running toward the crash. A black sedan had slammed into a streetlight. Steam hissed from the crumpled hood, and a man slumped over the steering wheel. Without hesitation, Lila yanked open the door, her fingers trembling but sure. Sir, can you hear me? No response. A trickle of blood ran down his temple. She checked his pulse, faint, but steady. The scent of gasoline burned her nose as she ripped off her scarf, pressing it against the wound. Her hands shook, but her voice remained steady. Stay with me. You're going to be okay. Help's coming. The man stirred faintly, his eyes flickering open. Through the rain and her blur of motion, Adrian saw her face, pale, rain-soaked, eyes fierce with determination. She looked like an angel dragged through battle. He tried to speak, but only a rasp came out. Don't move, she ordered softly, her voice cutting through the chaos. Just breathe. Sirens wailed in the distance. She stayed with him until the paramedics arrived, refusing to leave even when they told her she'd done enough. One of the EMTs glanced at her. You're drenched. Need a blanket? I'm fine, she said, brushing off the offer. He's the one who needs care. When they loaded the man into the ambulance, she finally caught her breath. She didn't know his name. She didn't care. Helping was instinct, not strategy. As the ambulance pulled away, its red lights reflected off the puddles at her feet like scattered rubies. Meanwhile, inside the ambulance, Adrian's eyes fluttered open again. The medic beside him spoke into a radio, but he barely heard it. He was thinking of the nurse, the warmth of her voice, the steadiness in her hands. For the first time in years, he felt something stir beneath the numbness. Not fear. Not pain. Something gentler. Something he'd forgotten. 2 days later, Lila returned to work. The crash had already faded into memory, a moment of chaos among many. Until the supervisor called her to the VIP ward. "There's a patient asking for you," he said. She frowned. "I don't remember being assigned to anyone there." When she entered the room, she froze. The man in the bed was the stranger from that night, cleaned up, awake, and surrounded by flowers that probably cost more than her monthly rent. He looked at her, recognition dawning. "You," he said softly, voice still hoarse. "You were there." "Yes," she said carefully, clutching her clipboard like a shield. "You were in an accident. I'm glad you're recovering." His gaze softened. "You saved my life. I did my job." "No," he corrected gently. "You did more than that." He reached for something on the bedside table, a black credit card. "Please. Let me thank you properly." She took a step back, her expression cooling. "You don't need to pay me. I didn't help you for money." The rejection startled him. He wasn't used to people refusing his gratitude, or his wealth. "Then why?" he asked quietly. She hesitated. Her eyes met his, tired but steady. "Because someone once needed help, and no one came," she said. "I promised myself I'd never let that happen to someone else." Silence filled the room. Adrian looked at her as if seeing sunlight after years in a cave. When she turned to leave, he whispered almost to himself, "Not everything's for sale." "I suppose you're right." She paused at the door but didn't turn around. "I know I am." And with that, she was gone. But Adrian couldn't stop thinking about her, the way her kindness had no price, her courage under the rain. In a life filled with deals, contracts and profits, she was the first person who'd ever made him feel indebted in the best way possible. Outside the hospital window, the rain started again. And for the first time in years, he didn't close the curtains. Have you ever done something kind for a stranger, only to realize later it changed your life too? Share your thoughts below. Someone's story might need your courage today. The hospital at night always felt like another world. The fluorescent lights dimmed, the corridors hushed, and every sound, footsteps, beeping monitors, whispered prayers, seemed to echo louder. Lila moved between patient rooms, adjusting IVs, checking charts, doing what she always did, holding other people's pain like it was her own. But tonight felt heavier. She'd seen him again. Adrian Cole. The name carried weight in the city. The billionaire whose companies built hospitals and bought politicians. She didn't know what to make of him. When she had looked into his eyes earlier, she hadn't seen arrogance. She'd seen loneliness. A kind she understood. Still, she told herself to stay detached. He's a patient. Nothing more. Adrian couldn't sleep. The hospital room was too bright, too sterile, too full of questions. He kept hearing her voice, because someone once needed help and no one came. He turned the words over like a stone in his hand. They didn't sound like pity, they sounded like truth. When the door opened, he knew it was her even before she spoke. Her footsteps were light but sure. "Still awake?" she asked, setting a tray beside him. "I'm not used to being told when to sleep," he replied, half smiling. "Then maybe you should try listening for once," she said, a small grin tugging at her lips. For a moment, silence filled the room, not awkward, but charged. She adjusted his blanket, checked his pulse, avoided his gaze. He watched her quietly. The faint scar on her wrist, the tired shadow under her eyes. She looked like someone who carried the weight of others without complaint. "I didn't thank you properly," he said softly. "You already tried." she reminded him. He chuckled, the sound low and genuine. Right. The money. I forgot not everyone's motivated by it. She met his gaze this time. Money keeps us alive, Mr. Cole. But kindness makes us human. Something flickered in his eyes. A crack in the armor. Hours passed. The rain started again, tapping softly against the window. When Lila came back on her next round, he was staring outside. Can't sleep? She asked again. Tell me something, he said suddenly. Why nursing? You could do anything. You're smart. You could have chosen something easier. Her voice softened. Because I know what it's like to need help and not get it. He nodded, understanding more than she realized. Did you lose someone? He asked gently. She froze for a second before answering. My brother. He was 17. The hospital turned us away because we couldn't afford the surgery. I decided I'd spend the rest of my life helping people who couldn't pay their way out of dying. The words landed heavy between them. Adrian swallowed hard, guilt pricking at him. He didn't know yet that his company had once been one of those cutting corners in public hospitals. But her pain was enough to silence him. I'm sorry, he whispered. Lila nodded. It's okay. I made peace with it. You can't fight the whole world, but you can still show up for someone. For a moment, their eyes met again, and something changed. He saw her not as a nurse, not as charity, but as light. And she saw him not as a billionaire, but as human. The next morning, Adrian insisted on being discharged. I can recover at home, he told the doctor, though he winced every time he moved. When Lila came to remove his she hesitated. You're not ready, she said. I've been ready for a long time, he replied. He stood, slightly unsteady. She moved closer, catching his arm before he fell. Their hands met, warm skin against cool skin. He looked down at her, the nearness making his chest tighten. Thank you, Lila, he said quietly, for saving me that night. She smiled faintly. You'd have done the same for anyone. He shook his head. No, I wouldn't have. The honesty in his voice caught her off guard. She opened her mouth to reply, but he'd already turned toward the door. Just before leaving, he paused and looked back. I'll see you again, he said. Her breath hitched. You shouldn't make promises like that, Mr. Cole. It's not a promise, he said. It's a certainty. Then he was gone, leaving behind a silence that felt too loud. That night, when she walked home under the faint drizzle, her mind replayed his words, his eyes, the way his voice had softened when he said her name. She scolded herself. He's a billionaire. You're a nurse. Different worlds, Lila. And yet, beneath the logic, a quiet voice whispered, but he looked at you like you were the only thing real. She shook the thought away, but the memory stayed. Adrian sat alone in the back of his limousine, city lights flashing across his face. His assistant talked about meetings, contracts, deadlines, but he wasn't listening. He was thinking about the nurse who refused his money. The one who looked at him as if his wealth didn't matter. He'd built an empire to feel invincible. Yet, a stranger's kindness had undone him in one night. As the car stopped at a red light, rain drumming on the roof, he said quietly to himself, she didn't save my life, she woke it. In the hospital, Lila finished her shift and walked into the break room, where her friend Maria teased her with a knowing smile. So, Maria said, sipping coffee, is it true you saved a billionaire? Lila groaned. Please don't start. Come on, you're the talk of the ward. I heard he sent flowers. Lila rolled her eyes. He can keep them. I don't need roses from a man who's allergic to humility. Maria laughed. You say that now. But if he shows up again, I bet you'll melt. Never happening. But as she said it, she caught herself glancing at the window, where the rain slid down in streaks of silver, just like that night. And deep down, though she'd never admit it, she wondered what it would be like to see him again. Do you believe a simple act of kindness can spark something deeper, like love or destiny? Share your thoughts in the comments. Someone else might find hope in your story. 2 weeks passed. Lila thought the memory of him would fade like the sound of rain, distant and soft, something that had happened to her, not within her. But every time she walked past the emergency room doors, she remembered that night, the chaos, the lightning, and the look in his eyes when he said she'd woken his life. She hated that it still echoed in her chest. She was a nurse, not a dreamer. She worked double shifts, helped others breathe when life knocked the air out of them. There was no space in her life for fairy tales, especially ones involving billionaires. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, Adrian Cole was losing focus, something that never happened. His board meetings stretched into silence as he caught himself staring at nothing. He'd built his fortune on control, strategy, precision, yet now, one woman's defiance haunted him. His assistant, Mark, noticed. "You're distracted, sir." Adrian didn't look up from the window. "Just thinking. About the new partnership. About people." Mark frowned. "People?" "Yes," Adrian murmured. "People who do good without expecting a return. People who remind you you've been living wrong." Mark didn't respond. He'd learned not to question when Adrian spoke like that. But as the billionaire stared out over the skyline, one thought kept circling back. I need to see her again. 3 days later, he did something he hadn't done in years. He went to the hospital without a press team, without security, without warning. The nurses froze when he stepped into the corridor. Even the receptionist straightened nervously. But Adrian didn't notice. His eyes scanned every hallway until they found her. Lila stood by the nurses' station, flipping through a chart. When she looked up and saw him, tall, crisp suit, that same calm intensity, her heart stopped for a second. "Mr. Cole," she said, startled. "Adrian," he corrected gently. "I wanted to thank you properly this time." "You already did," she replied, wary. He smiled. "Then consider this overdoing it." He handed her a small envelope. She didn't open it. "What is this?" "An opportunity. I'm funding a new community health program. I want you to lead it." She blinked. "You don't even know me." "I know enough," he said softly. "You care. That's rare." Lila hesitated. "You can't buy gratitude, Mr. Cole." His smile faded. "And you think that's what I'm doing? Isn't it?" The silence between them was sharp. Around them, nurses pretended not to listen. Finally, he sighed. "Maybe I deserve that. But this isn't charity, Lila. It's partnership." Her eyes softened a little, but she shook her head. "Partnerships between people like us don't work. You live in glass towers. I live in hospital corridors." He studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Maybe. But you'll change your mind." "Don't count on it," she said, walking away. But the way her hands trembled betrayed her. That night, Lila sat on her small apartment balcony, the city glowing below. The envelope lay unopened on her lap. Maria's voice came through the phone. "Girl, open it already." Lila laughed tiredly. "I don't need his money." "Who said it's money? Maybe it's a letter. Or a marriage proposal." Very funny. But curiosity finally won. She tore it open, and inside was a neatly typed proposal for a community health foundation, fully funded by Cole Industries, in her name. Lila's breath caught. "Oh no." "Oh no what?" Maria asked. "He's serious." The next morning, Adrian waited in his office, unsure if she'd come. He told himself he didn't care, he'd done his part. But when the elevator chimed and Lila stepped out, wearing her scrubs under a plain coat, something inside him steadied. "You read it," he said. She crossed her arms. "You're impossible. I get that a lot. I can't run a foundation. I'm not qualified." "You're exactly qualified," he countered. "You know the people who need it most." She hesitated. "Why me?" He met her gaze steadily. Because you saved my life. And I don't just mean that night. Her heart thudded. The air between them tightened, a quiet, unspoken current of something deeper than gratitude. Then she looked away. I'll help, but only because people need it. Don't mistake it for anything else. Understood, he said, though his faint smile betrayed him. Over the next few weeks, they worked together. Meetings, budgets, designs, two worlds slowly colliding. At first, she kept her distance, all professionalism and boundaries. But the more time they spent together, the harder it became. He wasn't the man she expected. He listened. He laughed easily when she teased him. He noticed when she skipped lunch, or when exhaustion shadowed her eyes. And she made him feel human again. He found himself waiting for her smile, for the moments when her guard slipped and her warmth filled the room. One afternoon, as they reviewed plans for the new clinic, she leaned over his desk, pointing at a sketch. Their hands brushed. They both froze. Lila pulled back quickly. Sorry. He shook his head. Don't be. Their eyes met, and for a heartbeat, the air between them turned electric. Then Lila stepped away, voice unsteady. This can't happen. What can't? Whatever this is. Adrian's expression softened. Maybe it already has. She turned toward the door, forcing a small laugh. You're out of your mind, Mr. Cole. Maybe, he said, watching her leave, but I like where it's going. That night, alone in her apartment, Lila pressed her palms against her chest. Her heart wouldn't slow down. You can't fall for him, she told herself. You save lives, not hearts. Especially not his. But when she closed her eyes, she saw his, and knew she was already in trouble. The rain was relentless that evening, drumming against the clinic's half-finished windows like an impatient heartbeat. Lila had stayed late again, poring over the files for the new Cole Community Health Foundation. The building smelled of plaster and rain-soaked dust, and the power flickered every few minutes. Everyone else had gone home hours ago, everyone except Adrian Cole. He stood by the wide glass window of his office on the top floor, his jacket off, shirt sleeves rolled to the elbows. His tie lay forgotten beside a pile of blueprints. He didn't expect her to still be there, but when he saw her through the half-lit hallway, hair loose, lips pressed in concentration, he couldn't help the way his chest tightened. Still here? His deep voice broke the silence. Lila jumped a little, glancing up. You scared me. Not the first time I've been accused of that, he said with a small smile, stepping closer. You should go home, Lila. I could say the same to you, she replied, brushing a stray hair behind her ear. But something tells me you're not the type to rest. He tilted his head, amused. Neither are you. The lights flickered again. This time, the storm outside howled, followed by a sudden crack. Thunder close enough to shake the windows. Then darkness swallowed the room. Great, Lila muttered. The backup generator was supposed to be installed today. Come on, Adrian said, pulling out his phone's flashlight. There's a maintenance room downstairs. Let's check it out. She hesitated. You. A billionaire doing electrical work. I wasn't always a billionaire. She raised a brow, intrigued. Oh. Were you a secret electrician before that? He grinned. Something like that. They moved together through the echoing halls, the narrow beam of light gliding over unfinished walls and tangled wires. It was oddly intimate, the two of them, trapped by circumstance, the storm raging just beyond the glass. Inside the maintenance room, Lila found the circuit box. It's probably just tripped, she said, crouching. Need a hand? Adrian asked. Hold the light steady, she replied, reaching up to flip the breaker. Their shoulders brushed as he leaned in. The warmth of his breath ghosted her neck, and she froze. Sorry, he murmured. It's fine, she said quickly, though her pulse begged to differ. A few tense seconds later, the lights flickered back on, and she exhaled in relief. See. Nothing a nurse can't fix. Adrian chuckled, his gaze soft. You're remarkable, you know that? She looked up at him. Don't start. I'm serious. Most people would have run from the storm. You walked into it, twice. Her lips parted. Why do you keep saying things like that? Because they're true. The silence stretched. The air felt charged again, like the moment before lightning strikes. Adrian, she said softly, you don't know me well enough to. He stepped closer. I know what I feel when I'm near you. Her heartbeat stumbled. That's dangerous talk. Maybe. But I've built an empire out of risk. Lila swallowed hard, taking a step back, but her spine met the wall. He wasn't threatening, he was patient, searching her face for permission. Tell me to stop, he whispered. She couldn't. Her body betrayed her, eyes closing just as his hand brushed her cheek. You shouldn't do this, she breathed. Why not? Because people like you don't stay. His expression changed, like her words had cut deeper than she knew. He drew his hand back, eyes dark with understanding. You're wrong, he said quietly. I just needed someone to remind me what staying feels like. The vulnerability in his voice undid her. She looked away, afraid that one more glance would melt her resolve completely. The storm outside softened to a drizzle. They stood in silence, both caught between desire and doubt. Then Lila forced a shaky laugh. We should finish the inspection. Adrian smiled faintly. Right. The inspection. As they walked back upstairs, the tension between them hummed, alive, undeniable. Later that night, as Lila gathered her things, Adrian appeared at the door again. You did great today, he said. Thank you. He hesitated. There's something else. Tomorrow's the first official meeting with the board. I'd like you beside me when I announce the foundation. Me? She asked, surprised. You're the reason it exists. Her eyes softened. You really mean that, don't you? I've never meant anything more. There it was again, the quiet sincerity that always caught her off guard. She nodded slowly. Then, I'll be there. As she turned to leave, he said her name. She looked back. For a heartbeat, their eyes locked, a silent confession neither dared to voice. Then she smiled, small but real. Good night, Adrian. Good night, Lila. Would you trust someone from a completely different world if your heart started to fall for them? Comment below. Do you think love can overcome pride and fear when the walls between two lives start to crumble? The next morning dawned gray and soft, a shy light filtering through the hospital windows as Lila hurried through the lobby. Her heart raced, not because of the day's tasks, but because of the memory of his hand brushing her cheek the night before. She had barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she replayed his words. I just needed someone to remind me what staying feels like. It had sounded too honest, too wounded for a man who supposedly had everything. But she had no time for daydreams. Today, she was stepping into a different world, his world. The coal industry's headquarters was intimidating, glass and chrome, gleaming with precision. As Lila stepped through the revolving doors in her plain navy dress, she felt like she was trespassing in someone else's story. Adrian met her in the lobby, wearing a crisp gray suit that made him look every inch the billionaire. But when he saw her, the mask of control softened. You look perfect, he said quietly. She flushed. Don't start. Just being honest. The boardroom was vast, filled with executives in tailored suits, their eyes sharp and assessing. Adrian led her to the front. Everyone, he announced, this is Lila Brooks, the woman whose courage inspired the Cole Foundation. Whispers rippled through the room. She caught phrases. A nurse? Is he serious? But she held her head high. Adrian continued, unwavering. This foundation isn't charity. It's change. And it started because one woman reminded me that human worth isn't measured in wealth. He looked at her when he said it, and for a moment, the rest of the room faded away. When the meeting ended, a few board members approached politely, but most left in a swirl of polite skepticism. Lila wasn't sure whether to feel proud or exposed. Later, as they rode the elevator down together, she finally asked, "Why did you really do this, Adrian? You could have donated quietly." He didn't answer at first. The elevator hummed with silence. Then he said softly, "Because once, I watched someone I loved die because she couldn't afford care. I swore it would never happen again." Lila turned to him sharply. "You mean?" He nodded. "My mother. She worked 2 jobs. Never complained. One night, she collapsed at home. By the time the ambulance came, she was gone." Her throat tightened. "I'm so sorry." "She didn't want to go to the hospital," Adrian continued quietly. "She said she couldn't afford to be sick. That haunted me. I thought if I became rich enough, powerful enough, I could fix everything. But money doesn't fix regret." Lila's eyes softened. "That's why you built your empire." He gave a faint, bitter smile. "And lost myself doing it." She reached out instinctively, resting her hand on his arm. "You didn't lose yourself, Adrian. Maybe you just needed to remember who you were." His gaze met hers, intense and raw. "You're the only one who's ever said that to me." That night, as rain tapped softly against her apartment window, Lila sat with her thoughts. His confession had cracked something open inside her, not pity, but recognition. Because she, too, knew what regret felt like. Years ago, she'd made a promise, one she'd never forgiven herself for breaking. Her younger brother, Danny, had suffered from severe asthma. Their parents couldn't afford the expensive inhalers he needed. Lila, still in nursing school, had begged for extra shifts, borrowed from friends. But one night, when she came home late, she found him on the floor, blue and still. The memory still clawed at her chest. She'd promised she'd never let anyone die because of not enough. Not enough time. Not enough help. Not enough money. That promise had made her a good nurse, but it had also made her afraid to love. Because loving meant risking that kind of loss again. 2 nights later, she and Adrian met at the foundation site again, reviewing plans under the soft hum of night lights. He seemed distant, thoughtful. "You've been quiet," he said. "So have you," she replied gently. He looked up, something flickering in his eyes. "You said the other night that people like me don't stay. Were you talking about me, or someone else?" Lila froze. "What do you mean?" He stepped closer. "Who made you afraid to believe in love?" She swallowed hard. "No one. Life did." He waited. She finally exhaled. "My brother died because I couldn't save him. I was supposed to protect him, and I failed." Adrian's expression softened, grief echoing grief. "Lila, I swore I'd never get close to anyone again. Because every time I care, something breaks. Someone leaves." He reached for her hand, slowly, reverently, and this time, she didn't pull away. "Then let me be the one who doesn't," he said quietly. Her eyes glistened. "You can't promise that." "No," he said, voice steady. "But I can try." And in that moment, the wall between them, built from loss, fear, and pride, began to crumble. They stood there for a long time, hands intertwined, silence speaking louder than words. Outside, the city glowed, 1,000 lights flickering against the darkness. Inside, 2 broken hearts found something that felt dangerously close to peace. If someone's pain mirrors yours, does it bring you closer, or remind you why you built walls in the first place? Comment below. Could shared scars ever be the start of real love? Morning sunlight spilled through the wide glass panes of the new Cole Community Health Foundation, a golden warmth that made everything look new. For the first time in months, Lila arrived smiling. The building was nearly finished now. The clinic wing was painted in soft cream, and the community garden was already blooming with flowers. Every corner whispered hope. And waiting near the doorway, wearing rolled-up sleeves and holding 2 cups of coffee, was Adrian Cole, the billionaire who somehow looked more human every day. "You're early," she said, amused. "So are you," he replied, handing her a cup. Extra cream, no sugar. That's right, isn't it? She blinked. You remembered. He smiled. I remember everything about you, Lila Brooks. Her heart gave a small, traitorous flutter. The weeks that followed were the gentlest she could remember. Their partnership had shifted. What began as professionalism had deepened into something quieter, steadier, and far more dangerous. They spent long hours planning outreach programs, laughing over late-night pizza in the office, and teasing each other about everything, from his meticulous perfectionism to her stubborn independence. Sometimes, he'd catch her looking at him. Other times, he'd look away too quickly, as if afraid to show what he felt. It was a dance, slow, hesitant, beautiful. One afternoon, after a grueling day of meetings, they ended up at a small riverside cafe nearby. Adrian insisted on driving her there himself. No chauffeur, no bodyguards, just him. They sat outside under a string of soft yellow lights as the sun dipped low. Lila stirred her drink. I still can't believe this is real. The foundation. All of it, she said. The building. The people we've helped. You. He leaned back, studying her. You talk like I'm a surprise. You are, she said honestly. You don't act like the men I expected someone like you to be. What did you expect? Cold. Arrogant. Distant. He chuckled. That's a fair assumption. She tilted her head. And yet here you are, drinking coffee out of a paper cup, laughing like you're free. His smile faded a little. That's because for the first time in years, I am. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was warm. The kind that wraps around you like a soft blanket. Then, softly, she asked, do you ever get tired of pretending? He looked up. Pretending what? That you're invincible. That money and power make you untouchable. He was quiet for a moment. All the time. The honesty in his voice disarmed her. I spent years building walls so no one could hurt me again, he said. But lately, those walls don't feel so safe. Maybe they're not meant to be, she whispered. Their eyes met, and something in the air shifted, fragile but magnetic. Lila, he said softly, leaning forward, I don't know when it happened. But you're the first person who's made me want to feel again. Her breath caught. Adrian. Let me finish, he said, voice low. You remind me that kindness isn't weakness. That love isn't a loss waiting to happen. And I don't want to keep pretending I don't feel what I do. Lila's heart pounded. Every rational thought screamed run. But her soul whispered stay. She looked at him, her eyes glassy. You don't even know how dangerous that sounds to someone like me. Then teach me, he said. She froze. What? Teach me what love really means, the kind that's brave enough to hurt. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The river shimmered behind them, reflecting the soft gold of the streetlights. Then she whispered, You shouldn't say things you don't mean. He smiled faintly. That's just it, Lila. I've never meant anything more. Their hands met halfway across the table, his large and warm, hers trembling but steady. The noise of the world disappeared. No boardrooms, no hospitals, no storms. Just the two of them, caught in the soft gravity of something real. For the first time, she didn't resist. He reached up, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek, his touch tender. You're shaking. She laughed softly. You do that to me. I'm sorry. Don't be. He hesitated, eyes searching hers. Can I? She nodded before her mind could stop her. Their lips met, gentle at first, hesitant, as if testing whether the world would allow it. Then deeper, more certain. It wasn't perfect or practiced, it was raw, human, and breathtakingly real. When they finally broke apart, she leaned her forehead against his, whispering, What are we doing? Something terrifying, he said, smiling. And maybe something right. They didn't speak much after that. They didn't need to. He drove her home in silence, fingers brushing hers every few minutes, and for once, neither of them pulled away. When she stepped out of the car, he caught her hand. "Lila," he said quietly, "you've already changed everything about my life. But if we ever become too much, just tell me. I'll stop." Her throat tightened. "That's what scares me, Adrian. That I won't want you to." He smiled, eyes full of something warm and aching. "Then don't." And for once, she didn't. That night, she lay in bed, replaying the softness of his words, the warmth of his lips, the gentleness of a man she'd sworn she'd never let close. And in that fragile space between exhaustion and hope, she realized she was no longer afraid. Maybe love didn't always break things. Maybe, sometimes, it rebuilt them. Do you believe two broken people can truly heal each other, or does love only deepen the cracks we already have? Comment below. When you finally find peace, would you risk it all for love? For weeks, everything felt like a dream. Lila and Adrian had found a rhythm that felt effortless, balancing laughter with longing, late-night calls with quiet mornings at the foundation. They didn't label what they had. They didn't need to. Every look said what words couldn't: "You matter to me." But all perfect things tremble before they fall. It began one morning when Adrian arrived at the hospital unannounced. He wanted to surprise her, coffee in one hand, a small bouquet of daisies in the other. He walked past the reception desk, smiling. "I'm here for Nurse Lila Brooks." The receptionist hesitated. "She's not here, sir." "What do you mean?" "She starts at 8. She called in sick." He frowned. Sick. Something in his chest tightened. Lila hadn't mentioned anything last night. She'd said she'd be busy with morning rounds. He tried calling, once, twice, 3 times. No answer. By noon, a quiet unease had taken root. He sent his driver to check her apartment. No one answered the door. By evening, that unease had hardened into fear. He was pacing his office when his assistant, Marcus, walked in, holding a folder, his face pale. "Sir, I think you should see this." Inside were a few photos, grainy, clearly taken by someone lurking nearby. Lila was in a small restaurant, sitting across from a man Adrian recognized immediately. Charles Whitman, one of his fiercest business rivals. The same man who had been trying for months to undermine Adrian's community projects. In the photos, Charles was handing her an envelope. Lila's expression was unreadable. "What is this supposed to be?" Adrian demanded. "Charles has been bragging," Marcus said quietly. "He claims one of your friends has been feeding him information about your foundation's finances. Someone close." Adrian's throat went dry. "You think that's her?" "I'm saying that's what he's implying." He didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. By morning, his heart warred with his logic. "She saved your life," his heart whispered. "She lied about being sick," his mind countered. "You saw those photos." When Lila finally appeared at the clinic later that day, smiling as if nothing was wrong, he felt something inside him splinter. "Hey," she said softly, walking toward him. "You've been ignoring my messages." "Have I?" His voice was colder than he intended. Her smile faltered. "Is something wrong?" "You tell me." He tossed the photos onto the desk between them. Her eyes widened. "What is this?" "That's what I'd like to know." She picked up one of the pictures, disbelief clouding her face. "Adrian, this isn't what it looks like." "Then tell me what it is." Her voice trembled. Charles reached out. He said he wanted to make a private donation to the foundation. "I didn't want to bother you until I knew it was real." "And the envelope?" "Papers." His assistant brought them. "Lila," he said, tone sharp, "do you expect me to believe you just met one of my biggest enemies alone, in secret, and didn't think I should know?" Tears welled in her eyes. "I didn't want to ruin things with another business fight. You've been happy. You've been healing. I thought I was protecting that." He laughed bitterly. "Protecting me? Or protecting yourself?" She flinched. "You think I'd betray you?" I don't know what to think anymore. Silence stretched between them, heavy, raw. Finally, she whispered, "You know what hurts most? That you didn't even ask before assuming the worst." "I've spent my whole life surrounded by people who want something from me," he said. "Forgive me for not wanting to be a fool again." Her eyes shimmered. "You're not a fool, Adrian. You're just scared." "Maybe I am," he said softly. "And maybe you're exactly the reason I should be." The words landed like a blade. She nodded slowly, voice breaking. "Then there's nothing left to say." She turned and walked away before he could stop her. That night, the foundation's lights glowed dimly against the skyline, the building that symbolized their shared dream now standing between them like a monument to what they'd lost. Adrian sat alone in his office, replaying every moment with her, every laugh, every touch, every promise, and hating himself for how easily he'd let anger win. Across the city, Lila packed her things in silence. She left her hospital badge on the counter and looked one last time at the framed photo of them smiling outside the foundation gates. Then she whispered, "Goodbye, Adrian," and walked out into the rain. Days passed. Adrian buried himself in work, trying to convince himself he'd done the right thing. But every decision felt hollow. Every success, empty. He missed her laugh. Her sarcasm. The way she looked at him like he was just Adrian, not a billionaire, not a project, just a man. He told himself it didn't matter. Until one morning, Marcus walked in again, another folder in hand. "Sir, you should see this." Inside was a report. Charles Whitman had been arrested for fraud. And among the evidence recovered was the same envelope, full of forged documents and fake donor files meant to sabotage the Cole Foundation. Adrian's heart stopped. Lila had been telling the truth. He drove to her apartment immediately, but the door was locked, the mailbox empty. The landlord told him she'd moved out a few days ago. "No forwarding address," the man said. "Just said she needed a fresh start." Adrian stood there in the hallway, holding nothing but regret. He'd pushed away the only person who had loved him without asking for anything in return. And for the first time in years, Adrian Cole, the untouchable billionaire, sank to his knees and wept. Would you have trusted love, or protected yourself like Adrian did? Comment below. When trust is broken, can love ever truly be rebuilt? Adrian Cole hadn't slept for days. The once proud billionaire now looked like a ghost of himself, unshaven, hollow-eyed, wearing the same gray coat he'd worn the day she walked away. He'd called every hospital in the city, checked every clinic, every foundation. Nothing. Lila Brooks had vanished. That evening, he stood alone in the quiet glow of the foundation lobby, the space she helped him build, the dream they once shared. Every corner of that place carried her presence, the way she arranged the flower vases, the little note she'd left on the breakroom board, healing hearts, one smile at a time. He traced her handwriting with trembling fingers. For the first time in his life, Adrian wasn't thinking about business, or pride, or image. He was thinking about the only woman who had ever seen him. And he'd broken her heart. He pulled out his phone and opened a new note, a habit he'd picked up from her. He began typing, his fingers shaking slightly. "Lila, I was wrong. About everything. You gave me your heart, and I repaid it with suspicion. You saved my life twice, once on that roadside, and again when you taught me to feel again. I don't deserve you. But if you ever read this, know that I am still waiting, and that every light in this foundation will stay on until you come home." He hit save but didn't send it. He didn't know where to send it. Across town, in a small rural clinic by the coast, Lila adjusted her stethoscope and forced a smile for the next patient. She'd started over quietly, far from the noise of the city, far from the man who had both healed and shattered her. The air smelled of salt and eucalyptus. The sea was her new companion, unpredictable, yet honest. Still, some nights when the tide was calm, she'd catch herself remembering his voice, that deep, careful tone that softened only when he said her name. She'd whisper into the quiet, "You're better off without me," though her heart didn't believe it. 2 weeks later, a familiar sound broke the routine, the distant hum of a helicopter. It wasn't uncommon for the clinic to receive emergency supplies that way, but something about the timing made her chest tighten. When she stepped outside, wind whipping her hair, she froze. Adrian Cole was stepping out of the helicopter, his coat billowing, eyes locked on her like he'd been searching for her his entire life. Lila. Her breath caught. Adrian. What are you doing here? He took a hesitant step closer. I finally stopped running from the truth. She folded her arms, her heart hammering. You shouldn't be here. Then why aren't you walking away? Silence. The wind carried between them, filled with everything they'd left unsaid. He reached into his pocket and handed her a crumpled photo, the one of her and Charles at the cafe. They were lies, he said, voice thick with guilt. He framed you. I should have believed you. I should have known. Her eyes glistened, but her tone was steady. And now what? You show up here, say sorry, and everything's fine again. No, he whispered. Nothing's fine without you. She looked away, blinking back tears. You hurt me, Adrian. You made me feel like I was just another one of your charity projects. I know. And I'll spend the rest of my life proving that you're not. He stepped closer. You said once that love means showing up even when it's hard. So I'm here. I'm showing up. Her voice cracked. Why now? Because I realized that the only thing worse than losing you is pretending I can live without you. She turned away, shaking her head, torn between anger and longing. You don't get to just fly into my world and fix everything with words. I didn't come here for words, he said, his voice low. I came for forgiveness. And for the chance to start over, even if it's at your pace. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then, slowly, Lila reached out, fingertips brushing against his wrist, fragile, uncertain. It was enough. The clinic door creaked open behind them. A little girl peeked out, smiling shyly. Miss Lila, she said, you forgot your notebook again. Adrian smiled faintly, glancing at Lila. Still saving the world, huh? She smiled back through tears. Someone has to. Then, with quiet vulnerability, she said, I don't know if I can trust you again. He nodded. Then let me earn it, one day at a time. Later that night, as the sun melted into the ocean, Lila sat beside him on the wooden steps outside the clinic. For a long time, they said nothing, just watched the waves crash, their hands barely touching. Finally, she whispered, You really flew all the way here? He chuckled softly. I would have walked if it meant finding you. Her eyes met his, a small smile trembling at her lips. You still talk too much. And you still look perfect when you're pretending not to smile. Their laughter, fragile, new, and healing, filled the space where pain once lived. Have you ever pushed someone away out of fear, only to realize they were the one thing you needed most? Tell us in the comments, would you forgive Adrian if you were Lila? The waves shimmered under the rising dawn, soft gold against the blue horizon. Lila stood on the clinic porch, watching the sun break free of the water as if it, too, had found a second chance. Behind her, the door creaked. Adrian's voice carried softly through the morning breeze. Couldn't sleep either? She turned to see him, coffee in hand, hair tousled, his usual confidence replaced by something gentler. I haven't slept well in months, she admitted. Not since everything. He handed her a cup. Then let's fix that. Together. For a moment, they just stood there, two souls who had walked through fire, unsure if the world would allow them peace. That morning, the small clinic buzzed with unusual excitement. Children whispered and peeked around corners. The head nurse, Mrs. Ellison, kept shooting Lila knowing glances. Why do I feel like everyone knows something I don't? Lila murmured. Then, at noon, a low rumble filled the air. Cars, vans, and a convoy rolling into the dusty road outside the clinic. Lila stepped out, shielding her eyes, and froze. It wasn't just anyone. It was Adrian Cole's entire foundation team. Doctors, builders, volunteers, all wearing bright blue shirts with the same words printed across the front. The Lila Brooks Community Health Center. She turned to him, eyes wide. Adrian, what is this? He smiled, that slow, tender smile she hadn't seen since the day they first met. This, he said, is what kindness looks like when it comes full circle. She shook her head, stunned. You named it after me? No, he said softly. You earned it. He took her hand. You saved my life that night on the roadside, and then you gave me a reason to live after. You built this place with your heart. I just gave it your name. Her lips trembled. I don't know what to say. Say you'll stay, he whispered. Not because of this, but because we finally found where we belong. The team began setting up a banner, unveiling new medical equipment, supplies, and a children's outreach unit, all funded in Lila's name. The local news had arrived too, cameras flashing. Reporters asked questions, but Adrian only said one thing into the microphone. Some people believe wealth measures success. I used to. But the woman who saved me taught me that kindness is the only real currency worth anything. He glanced at Lila, his eyes soft. And today, I get to give a fraction of that kindness back. Applause followed. Lila stood there, tears streaking down her face, her heart full to the brim. Later that evening, as the crowd faded and the sun dipped low, Adrian and Lila walked by the shore, the same quiet stretch of sand where their hearts had begun to heal. I don't deserve any of this, she whispered. He stopped walking. You deserve more than I can ever give. Lila smiled through tears. You've changed, Adrian. He looked out over the waves. You were the reason. You made me want to. For a moment, the world was quiet. Just the sea, the wind, and the faint hum of hope. Then he turned to her, eyes shining with sincerity. Lila, I spent my life building things I could touch. Towers, companies, fortunes. But the one thing I couldn't build was peace. You brought that into my life without asking for anything in return. He took a deep breath, heart pounding. So now, I want to give you something that comes from me, not the billionaire, not the businessman, just the man who loves you. He reached into his coat pocket, pulling out a small velvet box. Her breath caught. Adrian. He opened it. Inside was a delicate silver ring, shaped like two intertwining waves, one of light, one of shadow, meeting in the middle. It's not about ownership, he said quietly. It's about partnership. It's about never forgetting that love begins with kindness. Lila's eyes filled. You're serious. He smiled faintly. For the first time in my life. She laughed softly, tears falling. You don't make things simple, do you? Wouldn't know how, he said, grinning. She stepped closer, her voice trembling. You already had my heart, Adrian. You just needed to stop running from it. And with that, she slipped the ring onto her finger. He exhaled, relief and joy colliding in his chest. So, does that mean yes? She smiled, standing on her toes to kiss him. Tender, certain, forever. It means finally. The ocean roared as if in applause, the waves catching the reflection of the clinic lights that now glowed behind them, the Lila Brooks Community Health Center. What had started as one act of kindness between strangers had become a love story that would heal thousands. Weeks later, their love became more than private redemption, it became purpose. Together, they expanded their project, building outreach centers in forgotten towns and mobile hospitals across the country. At every opening, Adrian would always tell the same story. A stranger saved my life one night. I thought I was the one being rescued. Turns out, I was the one who needed saving the most. And Lila, standing beside him, would always smile, because she knew it was true. Have you ever done a small act of kindness that changed your life in ways you never expected? Drop your story in the comments. Your kindness might just inspire someone's miracle today.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.